Hey, what day is it, Evan?
What day is it? I don't know anymore.
I don't know. I have no idea anymore between this and between Celtics and between all the stuff that's going on. But we're here, day 3 of the NFL draft, and Patriots are close to picking. Really fast draft right now. It's moving quick. Twitter's probably 2 picks ahead of where they are on TV. So
Yeah.
obviously, the second we hear it, we're going to announce it. But we do know that Patriots have not made a trade yet. They started the day at 120 in round 4, and that's where they remain. So obviously we got a little bit of time here to talk about the upcoming pick and the need, and we all know what everybody wants because it's the same thing everybody always wants, which is, of course, receivers, weapons.
Give Mac Jones the weapons.
Get me the weapons, kid. So that's what we're looking for. One just went off the board that you liked here. Talk about that and talk about who else might be left here for the Patriots if they're going to kind of pick the bones here, because this was a deep receiver draft here. Are there still quality guys they can have?
Yeah, that's the interesting part about it, is that we touted out this wide receiver class as being extremely deep. So I'm not going to change my tune now just because the Patriots haven't taken one yet. This is a deep wide receiver
last year's was
class.
True, and they did.
That is true. I really liked Amon-Ra St. Brown out of USC. I think the knock on him that caused him to fall to the 4th round was a lack of deep speed and vertical speed, not a guy that necessarily had that second gear to separate over the top. So someone that the NFL for the last couple of years, I would say, but really forever, has really turned to those speed wide receivers, right? Like guys like Anthony Schwartz, who is a lot more raw than a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown, goes at the end of the 3rd round last night. And a lot of the reason why is because those two have a much different level of speed. Anthony Schwartz is a 4.26 guy. Amon-Ra St. Brown's probably like a low 4.5s receiver. So that's where you see the difference with them. Derek Barnes from Purdue just went off the board as well, who I had on my board too, is a linebacker prospect from Purdue. We know that they like Juwan Bentley. They've dipped into the Purdue pipeline in the past. So that's another guy that I thought maybe the Patriots would be interested in. So Amon-Ra St. Brown and Derek Barnes both off the board here early today, I think, are 2 Patriot type of guys. James Hudson, the tackle from Cincinnati, was probably one of the last tackle prospects that I saw as a developmental starter at the position. Stone Forsythe from Florida is really the only guy that I see left with starter upside at the tackle position. So the Patriots, in my mind, and granted, they could take somebody that I didn't do as much homework on and
that's
get it out of the park.
That person doesn't exist, Evan.
But in my mind, at the tackle position and at the cornerback position, and I'm not saying they did anything wrong, but they sort of missed the boat at those 2 spots, right? And so that 2022 starter, unless they pick up Stone Forsythe here at 120, that 2022 starter, that 2-year outlook window that we talked about a whole lot in leading up to the draft, drafting Stephon Gilmore's replacement, drafting Isaiah Wynn or Trent Brown's replacement. It doesn't feel like that guy is on the board anymore unless there's kind of a sleeper that they really like.
But let me ask you this, and tell me if you view this as somewhat of a departure. Patriots tend to, at least they talk about always drafting based off best player available. We're just looking for good football players. This draft, and certainly tackle and corner might be a need soon, but definitely not today. Okay? They definitely drafted needs with their first 3 picks that exist today. The most glaring being, of course, quarterback, and then any ability to rush the passer, which is obviously what they tried to address with their picks on day 2. Exactly. So given that's the case, is that seems strange to you that's kind of what they went with? Because as you said, missed the boat sounds harsh. It sounds like they blew it and drafted bad players in place of that. No, what that means is, or what Evan's saying is, that was a lot of talent to be had deep into this draft, and you're past the sweet spot of where you can get impact.
Yeah, basically the way I would put it is that the board didn't fall the Patriots' way, right, at those positions. At corner and at tackle, it just didn't break the way that they could have been able to get a guy at 38 or a guy at 96 that really fit that bill of being that long-term kind of 2-year outlook type of player at those positions. So yeah, it's not that they missed the boat on it. It's more so that the board didn't really fall in that direction. Even in the first round, Patrick Surtain and JC Horn go 8 and 9. So they didn't have the opportunity to draft either one of those guys. So it really just didn't break the way that they wanted. The pick before the Patriots at 14 in the first round was Elijah Vera Tucker to the New York Jets, who I think the Patriots were high on as a tackle prospect as well. So tackle, corner just didn't go their way. Now, where I look besides wide receiver, and I think there's plenty of names. I can list probably 10 names that are still on the board at wide receiver. That would be interesting prospects for them if they took them. They also have a lot of linebacker talent.
I'm going to put up some of these based off of your big board analysis here.
Yeah, there's definitely some wide receivers. The one name I would say off this list right now that I really like outside of the wide receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown obviously is already off the board.
Yep.
Yeah, is Tyree Gillespie, the safety from Missouri, who is somebody that I think can play the deep middle, physical kind of ball hawking safety at the deep part of the field, but more so as a physical presence back there than a ball hawk. Not somebody that necessarily is going to range over the top and have a lot of flashy interceptions on tape, but he really brings the boom, and he's got a downhill demeanor about him to come in to play the run or play a screen, things like that, and play the underneath throws, crossers, really good instinctive football player that can also play in the kicking game. And we know at this point of the draft, and we've talked about this a lot, going into day 3, at this point of the draft, you're going to have to start drafting players that are also going to contribute on special teams, because
everybody loves that. Everyone loves when you get the profile of these picks. It's projects as a good special teamer, and everyone wants to lose their minds. But this is where you are in the draft. It's hard to find starters
because if you're going to make the roster, because look, Tyree Gillespie is a nice player. Stone Forsythe is a nice player. Some of these wide receivers are good. But if you're going to make the roster for the Patriots as a 4th-round pick when they have 76 guys already on the team going into the draft, a lot of those guys were veteran players. If you're going to make the team, then you're going to have to be able to play on 4th down. It's that simple. Otherwise, there's really no role for you. And I think even a guy like Ronnie Perkins is going to have to contribute on 4th down as well. I think he's going to have to carve out a role there too. He's going to make the team regardless because he was a third-round pick. Those guys make the team. But at the same time, he's going to have to carve out a role for himself on special teams if he wants to be active on game day. So that's going to be a big thing, I think, for the Patriots here. Guys like Gillespie, he can really play in the kicking game. He was a big-time contributor at Missouri, playing on 4 or 5 different units for them covering kicks. So I think that's going to be something that they're going to look at a lot here as well. They could go running back. Michael Carter, he's just went. I thought maybe they'd be interested in him. But they do have Demetric Felton. They do have Kenneth Gainwell still out there. Chuba Hubbard still out there if you want more of a guy that can run between the tackles. So there's some talent at running back still on the board if they want to go that direction as well. Look, there's still plenty of good players. But I think in terms of hitting on corner and tackle, as we talked about a whole lot, I'm not sure if that's necessarily still out there.
Yeah. So other thing before we and again, we'll see. We're close. The TV's got us at 114. We're a little 115. Where are we in actuality here?
We're at I think around 117.
Okay, so we're close here.
Yeah.
Jabril Cox there to Dallas, 115.
Yeah. I know a lot of people in the chat over the last couple of days have been asking about Jabril Cox for the Patriots. He's an interesting player. He's someone that is basically Kyle Duggar, right? He's a defensive back that plays linebacker, plays a little bit out of the slot. He's sort of this new age hybrid of safety linebacker, right? And I like his tape, but I didn't really feel like they need another one of those guys. They got Duggar, they got Adrian Phillips, they got Jalen Mills in free agency. Where does another one of those guys fit into the mix? Probably nowhere. So I think that's why Jabril Cox wasn't high on their board, but I do like some of the inside linebacker talent that's still out there, specifically Cam Mcgrone from Michigan and Dylan Moses from Alabama. And those are 2 programs, as we know, they're going with programs they know, right? They got 2 Alabama guys. They got an Oklahoma guy. They're not really going for the Duggars of the world this year. And those are 2 programs and Michigan and another Alabama guy, obviously, that the Patriots have always dipped into. So I could definitely see that coming out of here as well.
You mentioned real quick, Evan, because I did want to talk before we get into the possible picks today. You did mention you thought Perkins might have also been a bit of a luxury pick there, or a bit of a redundancy there in the third round. You like the tape, you like the player, but maybe not necessarily what the Patriots needed. Again, you're talking same thing with that safety. Sure, you might find a good football player there, but if you're looking at specific needs, if something is close, maybe go in a different position.
Yeah, exactly. Bill Belichick would probably scoff and roll his eyes at the notion
of almost everything that we say.
Yeah, at the notion of best player available, right? But I think that's truly what Ronnie Perkins was a player that Daniel Jeremiah, for example, had him in his top 50. He thought he was a top 50 player in this draft.
So there were quite a few people that thought that was a spectacular pick that late, that he was. I think McShay also might have been top 50. There was a couple of people who really, really liked it.
So the Patriots are on the clock. I know they're not on the TV clock, but they're on the real clock because these picks are moving fast. Every year I say this, and every year the fourth round pick that the Patriots make, they usually throw a curveball at me. It's usually one of the guys that I haven't studied. So let's cross our fingers.
They take another place kicker here with tattoos. Okay, and again, we know that was fifth round, not fourth, but. That's something we haven't really talked much about it. Is that something you think they're going to try to address in this draft?
I do. And there's a couple of kickers that they could take. So the Patriots took a running back.
Okay.
So, which doesn't shock me. It's Ramad Stevenson, who is not somebody that I studied closely because I didn't do running backs very closely, but is obviously someone that is a draftable talent at this range of the draft. I'm a little surprised that they went with Stevenson over guys like a Gainwell or a Felton, but certainly a player that, from Oklahoma again. So another Oklahoma Sooner. So obviously they
three coaches, and that's it. Right.
So this is a wrecking ball. This is a wrecking ball running back. This is
again, we're looking at 6 feet, 230 pounds. Okay, this is a big dude.
This is a between the tackles, heavy, big wrecking ball running back. A guy like a Gus Edwards, the Gus Bus in Baltimore, is a good kind of player comparison for a guy like Ramad Stevenson. Certainly not the pass catching back, the versatile back that we were thinking the Patriots might be eyeing, but somebody that's definitely more of a between the tackles, short yardage type of running back. Really good power, really good size, really, really willing to kind of lower the boom and be a power runner. So definitely fits what they want, downhill power football.
But again, let me ask you, at this point, you've got Damian Harris as an early down workforce, and you've got Sony, who you're not going to pick up a fifth-year option, but he's still around. And I know you're looking maybe ahead here, but was this a need?
To me, no. But
and it's neither a need nor a best available sort of scenario. I do want to point out with this player, with Stevenson, JUCO guy. Went to Oklahoma, didn't really play didn't start in 2019, suspended for a drug test. That carried into the 2020 season. And for 5 games, he still led them in rushing with 665 yards on 100 carries, 7 touchdowns. But I'm not going to say a drug test is baggage necessarily, but it's a person who had a couple things going on here as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting, I'm not surprised the Patriots took a running back by any means, especially after they drafted Mac Jones. It felt like they were going to build their offense around an efficient passing game with Mac Jones from the pocket and a running game to supplement that. And if you look at if you look at what Alabama had in Mac Jones's time there, they had Najee Harris. Now, Stevenson's obviously not Najee Harris. Najee Harris is first-round talent, a much different, better type of player. He can also catch the ball. Stevenson, though, is that between the tackles, physical, downhill, powerful runner. And that does fit what the Patriots are going to try to do here. That fits what direction this offense is going in. And the one thing that I think that Bill Belichick, remember a few years ago when Cordell Patterson had to start taking reps at running back because they got so many people injured that they didn't have any running backs left, so they had to put CP back there. I think that haunted Bill Belichick. I think he said, I don't want to
I'm never going to go through this again.
I never want to be in a position again where I have to put a guy that's truly a wide receiver at running back because we don't have any other options. And they have loaded up on running back depth ever since. So they get a guy like Stevenson who can be the third back in that early down role. And that's how the Patriots look at it too. I know Bill broke down last night about how they use the colors and the letters and the numbers, and we're all trying to figure that all out, exactly what he was trying to say. But this is one of those things where they look at roles, right? So we were all kind of zeroed in on that pass catching, that James White running back type of role. Stevenson fits the Sony Michel, Damian Harris archetype, right? He's in that early down back role. So I think that they were just looking at this as depth. They just wanted another piece, a third early down back. Now, the other thing I will say,
I do want to also point out, since you mentioned Patterson, he ran the ball more last year for Chicago than he did 2 years before that to New England. So the Pats actually kind of unlocked a little bit of his game, even though that wasn't what Belichick. Yeah, even though that wasn't what Bill wanted to do. He rushed 60, how many carries? 60-something carries last year. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so the funny thing is that every single time we talk about depth, Bill Belichick brings up that year with the running backs, right? He says, we thought going into the season we had this insane amount of depth at running back, and we didn't. It turned out everybody got hurt, and we didn't have that same amount of depth. So that's exactly what I think we're seeing here with this pick with Stevenson. The other sort of, we want to connect dots here. This might speak highly to J.J. Taylor. I think they might feel pretty good about what they have in J.J. Taylor. He's obviously a bursty, elusive, pass-catching type of back. Ivan Fears compared him to Dion Lewis. That type of smaller stature, but somebody that packs more power behind his pads and his size would suggest and can catch the ball. So maybe they feel like the successor to James White is already on the roster, and it's J.J. Taylor.
Perhaps another thing that I think is interesting, this may portend, something regarding the starting quarterback situation, because why would you need a big, bulky, powerful in between the tackles, short yardage back? Well, maybe because your quarterback isn't going to be relied on rushing for 13, 14 touchdowns this year in those short yardage situations. So this may be a little glimpse of them thinking, Cam Newton might not be the guy back there the whole time. And we're going to need an option down there at the goal line, because we're going to be their goal line offense would be completely different with somebody else under center than what they had last year. And so that, again, I don't know whether you agree, whether that is something that that could be in play here, but it is interesting that you do bring in that between the tackles kind of real big thumper on this year on this team.
Yeah, it is interesting. The one thing I'll say about that, first of all, Alex and I talked about on the podcast about Cam having a package on the goal line or short yardage. Even if Mac Jones ends up being the quarterback, Cam is such a good runner that they can find a role for him, right? Like they can play him. They can have sort of a Cam package down on the goal line. He rushed for 12 touchdowns. That's a guy that I want out there rushing on the goal line for me. He's probably, in his career, Cam Newton is the best short yardage running back in the NFL, right? Since 2011, 2010, right. He is the best goal line running back in the entire NFL. So even if they do go Mac Jones, I still feel like at the same time they could probably have a role for Cam in that sort of short yardage type of role. Stevenson, to me, and I think when you look at Patriots running backs, you always think about the redshirt year, right? You always think that all these guys, unless you're drafted in the first round like Lawrence Maroney or Sony Michel, most of those guys redshirt. Like it's very rare that a rookie running back gets on the field for New England. Damian Harris, Shane Vereen, James White. I mean, just go on and down on the list. It was Ridley. It was Maroney and Sony Michel were really the only guys that eventually got on there. But Stevenson he's a wrecking ball. He's a powerful guy. He can get downhill. He's going to run over people. He is going to bounce off of people. He's kind of a pinball type of running back, right? That's just going to sort of bounce off of tackles and keep moving forward. So, yeah, he's got that short yardage quality to him. He's got a little bit of, I would say, kind of like a LeGarrette Blount, right, to a degree. Now, is he going to be as good as LeGarrette Blount? Probably not. But sort of that style of running back, more so than somebody like a, versatile Rex Burkhead style of running back.
Yeah. Okay. So let's reset where we are here. And again, what we do have is, the Patriots had 3 4th-round picks. Those are gone. So we've got big gaps everywhere, and it's all because of the trade up for Christian Barmore, where they moved from 46 to 38 and gave up 2 4th-round picks. So they have not closed any gaps here. They get what many people consider to be equivalent or close to Perkins. And then he 120. You had a lot of guys on the board. You thought running back was possible. Ended up taking one that you did not necessarily have. And again, is this starting to feel more that Belichick just went shopping and had a grocery list and he knew what he needed and he's going to get those things?
Sounds like it. And look, they have all these 4 more picks. I would be floored if they use all 4 of them.
Right. Yeah.
It just what are we doing at this point in terms of being able to fit all these guys onto the roster? Like Stevenson, I don't know. I guess if Damian Harris and Sony Michel both get hurt, then maybe he has a role on the team this year. I just highly doubt that Stevenson's going to be a factor in 2021. So I think we're already starting to get into like depth, looking beyond 2022 type of players at this point.
And consolidating picks is also a possibility in here to move into a place here because you don't want to take them all and then you just sweep up whatever you want on the undrafted free agent, kind of pool that's left over at the end. Another thing that you do see here sometimes on these in day 3, you do see some teams dumping players that they're not that they don't think they're going to carry to maybe pick up a pick or 2 here. Anybody on the radar here, the Patriots could theoretically look at any teams that might be looking to kind of get out from under something, and this is their last chance to grab something rather than just release them, where maybe you can get somebody for a 6th or something like that. At this point in the draft.
Yeah, maybe they could trade some people off the roster or trade for other people on the roster.
Trade for others, right.
Yeah, it's possible. Look, if I'm the Patriots, though, and I have to look up the trade value chart and do the whole math and all that kind of stuff to see, but I would take maybe the 5th-round pick, the 2 6th. I'd come back up if I'm New England.
If you can, yeah.
Yeah, and get a player that can be a contributor on the team. I don't know, unless they take a kicker in the 6th round, right? I just don't see where that player is going to contribute at this point of the draft.
It would make sense to do this to get a kicker just for competition at this point.
I would definitely draft
as good as Folk was. As good as Folk was, he's 111 years old. So like you do have to bring somebody in.
I would definitely bring in a kicker. I don't know if Evan McPherson from Florida or Bergalis from Miami are going to get drafted. This is such a weird year, so it's hard to tell if they're going to actually take specialists in this type of draft. But those are the 2 guys that you got to circle and look, they threw Rohrwasser at us last year, so maybe they have another kicker in mind. But those are the 2 guys that everybody talks about as the Rodrigo Blankenchips of this draft, right? Yeah. McPherson and Borgalis. Those are the 2 top kickers on everybody's board. But Stevenson, I think, is someone that I don't know. I don't think he contributes this year. I think this is a depth piece. The Patriots are looking
for Sony being gone.
Yep. For Sony being gone. Yep, exactly where I was going with that. I think that they're looking at it and saying, we're probably not going to give Sony Michel a second contract, or we might not give Sony Michel a second contract. I don't think anybody would fault them given Sony's knee issues and how he's looked at times in his career with the Patriots. Not giving him a second contract makes a whole lot of sense. So maybe it's Damian Harris and Stevenson's backfield next year.
Though I will say he ran with more purpose and aggression coming back off injury in the later part of last year than he did the whole year prior, I thought. So he did show something, but again, you're probably not picking up that 5th-year option. And that's that. And I mean, that's the sad life of NFL running backs these days. It's one contract and out unless you're special. And
even if you're
the Patriots
special,
take advantage of this. It's almost like the gig economy, like it's just, they know it. They take advantage of it. Yeah. And you're right. Even if you're special, only a few teams are willing to shell out big bucks.
And it's also a dicey thing, right? Look at Zeke Elliott, right? Like that's going to turn out to be a bad contract for Dallas. They had Tony Pollard, their backup running back, might be better.
Who was more effective. Look at, every single time, Joe Mixon being another one. Bengals cave, they give him money. He was out last year. Did they miss him when he returned? Did it make a difference on that team? Absolutely not. So you're right. I mean, it is, when you say special, I think it has to be almost a next level of special.
It has to be Saquon, Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey.
You're there.
Right.
A guy you have to get 30 touches because they're such a dynamic weapon, and if you don't, but if you're just talking about turn around and hand the ball off to a between the tackles guy, it just doesn't make sense to sign those guys to big multi-year deals.
So I saw some people in the chat kind of asking for a comp for Stevenson. What kind of running back are they getting here? I think NFL.com, Lance Zierlein had a great comparison as Gus Edwards on the Baltimore Ravens. That's the type of running back that you're getting, a powerful, downhill, wrecking ball, short yardage, 4.6 something in the 40-yard dash. This is not a home run hitter.
4.63, I think I saw.
This is this is 4 yards in a cloud of dust with this guy, right? This is an old school thumping running back. Now, do the Patriots need that? I mean, it's not as high on the list as corner or tackle or wide receiver to all of us, but again, I mean, look, Bill Belichick's going to scoff at the idea of us talking about what they need, right? He's going to give us one of those Belichick eye rolls if I ask him today, well, why did you take a running back, Bill, when you needed all these other positions? They don't look at it like that. They look at it as, are these players that we can project into our system and make something out of them? And they feel like Stevenson, who has some good things about him, has a good running style about him. I know that there's some good tape out there of him in pass protection, which I think is valuable for the Patriots. But at the same time, I feel like they feel like this is a Sony Michel long-term outlook at the running back position type of thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing is you can hit on running backs later on in the draft here. So you may get something, and again, this person might surprise you. As Evan mentioned, Patriots don't, I mean, the fact that Damian Harris was redshirted his entire first year, and then clearly on day one of camp the following year, he was the best running back and one of the best players on the field.
If he doesn't break his hand, I think he's the starting running back week one.
From day one last year. And it was obvious to everyone who was there. Not only was he literally made every single person's list as the most impressive person out there on the field, not just for in that room, in that group, period. And it was obvious, and he missed, and he redshirted the whole first year, and nobody really understood it. And it was a bit frustrating for that, especially when you saw how good he was. So I think you feel good about the running back position here if you're the Patriots, at least coming back this year.
Bill loves his running backs. He hates being shorthanded at that position.
He got his Jonas Gray. But I've seen a couple comps. The most favorable comp I saw for Stevenson was Marshawn Lynch. Let's not go there. The other one I saw was Eddie Lacy. We'll see about that.
Okay. I mean, maybe, I think if you're a Patriot fan and you're looking to compare him to somebody that you might be familiar with, I'm sure we've played the Ravens. The Patriots have played the Ravens a couple of times already in the last couple of years. So Gus Edwards on Baltimore is the guy that I would think about, and I think everybody can remember Gus from the battles that we've had, Patriots have had with Baltimore. So I would look at that. He's kind of LeGarrette Blount. He had a lot of issues in college, and that's the reason why I think he went undrafted, if I remember correctly, or maybe it was a late round draft pick. Sort of like that, I guess, but I think that's even being a little bit generous. So we're probably talking about more like a Gus Edwards type of player.
Yep. All right. Well, let's reset this one more time. Again, here's what we're looking at here for picks. The Patriots have made 4. They've got 4 remaining. Round 5, 177, 2 in round 6, and a round 7 pick. Evan Lazar, you believe they are going to consolidate these picks, so we will see.
I would love it if they could trade back up here because in the top 150, if you use 177, 188, 197, and kind of create a package out of those picks, then I think you can really get back up into the top 150 and get another player that can actually make the roster. Yeah. I think the guy that you draft in the 7th round is getting cut. Like, I just don't see that they're going to have a room for him on the team. So might as well just, package those picks together, move back up, and actually get somebody that can contribute.
Yeah. Okay. So what we're going to do here, we'll let everybody here know what we've been doing the entire 3 days of this draft. If the Patriots are on the clock or the Patriots make a trade, we're going to jump up back live as quickly as possible, kind of preview the pick and then talk all the way through it and give you some analysis. And so,
A lot of questions in the chat about Sean Wade as well, the Ohio State cornerback that's fallen down the board. He is somebody that played really well in 2019, is a big corner, 6'1", 200 pounds, has good size to him. The reason why he's fallen down the board is because his 2020 was an absolute disaster. He got just torched by good receivers, especially in the college football playoff. It's hard to get that out of your head when you're an evaluator, when you watch Devontae Smith just absolutely burn Sean Wade for 4 straight quarters in the national championship game. So when you know that when he goes up against NFL talent, he struggles, that's not going to bode well. But he is at this point in the draft, if they're looking for a corner, that he would be an absolute steal to get in the 4th round, 5th round.
Well, again, let's hope he's on one of the preferred lists in terms of colleges and universities.
They don't really like Ohio State guys. They're not a big Ohio State program type of school, and they've targeted Alabama and Oklahoma in this draft.
They like crimson and burgundy here.
We always do the wide receiver thing too. Like every single year, why they need a wide receiver. They need a wide receiver. They need a wide receiver. N'Keal Harry is the only sort of I would say exception to the rule that Bill Belichick doesn't value wide receivers as much as we all do. Like, I think that's pretty clear, especially in the draft, that they just don't look at that position outside of N'Keal as a position that they need to address early. You know, they feel like they can get their Jacoby Myers, they can get their Julian Edelman.
But they're wrong. I mean, like I said,
I'm not saying they're right, but that's just
I'm saying
we do.
If you watch the team last year, it's obvious. The thing you addressed, and again, this is I know something that drives people crazy, but a really astute point you made last year, just talking about how the Patriots go about stockpiling talent at that position. The best teams out there take multiple swings at this, and that for them works. You look at Kansas City, they go Hardman, they go Robinson, they keep coming back to it, like they do not rest. And it doesn't mean a 1st round pick every single year, but very often you're going to see a lot of these teams taking swings in the 2nd round on those tier 2 guys and see if they can hit a home run, because it's a lottery ticket. I mean, I'm not saying it's 1 in a million, but 1 in 2, 1 in 3 of those guys will hit, and they're going to hit big for you. And it's going to be a valuable member of, of your offense and possibly a really dynamic playmaker. You can't just do it once and then never. So draft N'Keal Harry once and then don't even take a single player at the position what will look like 2 straight years. And sure, if you take one now at 5'177", you're taking a special teamer. You're not really taking a receiver there. So you're going 2 straight years in very deep wide receiver drafts, not drafting a wide receiver after absolutely whiffing, trying to take one in the 1st round. That's I'm a little dubious about, that strategy.
I am a little dubious about it too, but I think we can finally say, look, last year was a great wide receiver class too. They didn't draft one. Right? They didn't draft a wide receiver.
2 years in a row, 2 great classes where seemingly you get value. Yeah.
Now, there are some guys still left on the board that I do like. Daz Newsome from North Carolina. I hyped up Amari Rodgers the entire pre-draft process. Daz Newsome is kind of like day 3 Amari Rodgers, right? He's the guy that's a little bit better value maybe to them. He has punt return skill. He has gadget player skill where you can bring him in motion and get him the ball in space and let him create with it. He's got some vertical speed. I think that's the sort of the guy that they might look at. You could look at somebody like a Seth Williams from Auburn if you want some size on the outside. He's sort of your prototypical X. Shee Smith from South Carolina still out there as like that, slot receiver that runs good routes. He's sort of in that conversation too. I've mentioned Semi Fahaku from Stanford a bunch of times. 6'4", 4'4", 40, really raw prospect, but really good upside. There's some options there, right? I think there are some options, but at the same time, the Patriots just continue to just ignore the wide receiver position, and they did sign Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne, so I'm sure Belichick will get asked about it after the draft, like he was asked about it last year. And what did he cite? He cited N'Keal and he cited Mohamed Sanu as a reason why they didn't use a high pick on a wide receiver or pick at all. This year, I'm sure when we ask him, Bill, why didn't you guys take a wide receiver if they don't take one? He's going to say, well, we signed Nelson Aguilar and we signed Kendrick Bourne in free agency, so we already invested money and capital into that position this offseason.
And we have to be fair. I'm not saying draft a receiver every single time. I'm saying that I mean, this is the reality of the Patriots situation. When you had a group as bad as they were last year, and then you did address it in free agency, and still you enter the draft, and most people place wide receiver as a very legitimate, serious need to the point that, drafting one in the first round wasn't out of the question. It is, again, interesting that Bill feels okay with it, because most analysts and most other people would say wide receiver and speed at the wide receiver position is still a big need for this team. And much like with the Harry Sanu situation, we did it. We did address it. We drafted these guys. Now it's let's hope you hit home runs. And look, we're not going to say that Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne are going to be Moss and Welker. I mean, the year you bring in those guys, but I mean, that was a year where he felt he had to address it, went out, traded for two people, addressed it. This, in Bill's mind, as you said, is addressing the need, which he has. And so here you are. So Patriots fans are always going to be disappointed. Almost every pick that goes by, if it's not a wide receiver, Patriots fans are upset.
Every year.
It just is what it is.
For the last 5 years, we've done
it. It is what it is.
We've done this show for the last 3 drafts, and every year it's wide receiver.
Why didn't you take the receiver?
Yeah. You take another, bruising running back, and you pass on the wide receiver. What are we doing? And I think the thing that I also want to point out, and this is not to defend Bill Belichick in this strategy, it's more to explain why they're passing on these wide receivers. The Patriots signed 2 tight ends in free agency, and Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, that are going to play close to 90+% of the snaps. They are going to be.
You've got room for 2 receivers on the field most times.
Right,
that's
exactly. They're going to play a ton of 12 personnel this year with 2 tight ends. So you're talking about a spot for maybe 3 or 4 wide receivers on the depth chart that are actually going to contribute next year. And you sign the 2 guys in free agency. You're bringing Jacoby Myers back, who you think as a 3rd or 4th wide receiver is a nice piece. And where does a top 100 pick at that position, where does that fit into the 12 personnel model? It obviously,
it doesn't, but it's a N'Keal Harry replacement, you would think, because I mean, N'Keal is basically borderline cuttable for this very reason. I mean, I don't think he will be, because they could
probably get something for him in a trade.
Either they get something for him, or I mean, he doesn't serve much of a purpose for that reason that you said. If you're starting Aguilar and Bourne, and you have Myers operating as a 3rd receiver in the slot out there with the 2 tight ends, there's not a ton. Right. There's not a ton there. Yeah.
So that's the thing, is there's not a ton of snaps, right? There's just not a ton of snaps for a rookie wideout. So taking one in the top 100, knowing that, okay, then we're going to have to take away snaps from Aguilar, we're going to have to take away snaps from Bourne, who we just paid pretty good money to both of those guys. It doesn't make as much sense, but still, they can still get one here on day 3. Maybe they get, I mentioned Daz Newsome. I think the Bucs just took my guy Jalen Darden, so he's now off the board. Daz Newsome is a guy from UNC that can return kicks and punts. So maybe they get somebody that can be a wide receiver and a returner. We know that those guys have had success in the past. So I don't know. I think it's weird that they continue to ignore that position to a degree. But at the same time, I guarantee you, when Bill is asked about it today, he's just going to say, we did that in free agency. We addressed that in free agency.
And exactly right. All right. So again, just letting everybody know, same thing. At the end of the day, we are going to, not end of the day, near round 5, when they're set to pick again, we'll jump back up unless there's a trade. It happens fast and furious, so we're going to try to get up here as quickly as possible if there is, and we'll talk about that player. We'll reset the board, see where we are. Again, the next pick right now slated for 177. Is that correct? 177?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, 177. 2 picks in the 6th, 1 in the 7th. We will come back. We'll talk about it. We'll do a wrap. At the end of the day, of course, very in-depth player profiles you can find on our YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe to that if you haven't already. Follow Evan Lazar on Twitter. Of course, I'm sure all of you do. If not, you're making a big mistake, not just for the rest of this draft, but in everything that we're going to be talking about, he's going to be writing about, and all of the threads he's going to be doing when he really starts to dig into some of the tape of these guys, especially in the later rounds, to see what, if anything, they can contribute.
I already did, so there you go. You can look Christian Barmore, Ronnie Perkins, and Mac Jones are already up.
We've got all of those guys up already, so there's a lot of good stuff there. Check us out on clnsmedia.com. We will be back throughout the day, so you're not rid of us yet. Everybody cheer up. Well, nobody's mad, but at this point right now, we're looking at depth guys
They got the quarterback. They got
your quarterback, right?
So like everything else at this point, look, it wasn't Justin Fields. We all wanted it to be Justin Fields. They got a quarterback in Mac Jones that fits exactly what they want to do at that position. So everything else is kind of just is what it is at this point. Bill did the checkers move with the QB in round 1, so that's what you got.
Yeah, and again, the this is just a year unlike any other because of the amount of money that was spent in free agency. So the amount of new talent that's entering the Patriots this year, regardless of what they do with late 4th round and 5th round draft picks, is significant. So I think obviously that's something to look forward to, in addition to players you're getting back off of COVID and a whole lot. So it is a hugely different team already. When we'll see what happens the rest of the draft. Could be something spicy or exciting that happens here late, and we'll be here to talk about it. So until then, thanks for watching this stream. We'll be back in a little bit for